one other thing about height, an issue to consider, is that when you first put the soil in and you fill it to the top, it will settle 3 or 4 inches. But you want that 3 or 4 inches to be empty because that is a very critical space where you put the heavy, dense mulch, which will keep the whole bed far more, retaining more water far more than if you didn't have a thick 3-inch or even 4-inch layer of mulch. And I test all these things in my garden. It's more like an experimental garden. So I'll do one bed without the mulch, or I'll use the wood chips, or I'll use just the leaves that have been gathered from the yard. And then the other bed I'll put like super dense, very highly manufactured, it's a professionally manufactured mulch that's heated up and it's much more dense. And I've tried that, and I will have to water half the amount for the bed that has the dense mulch than the bed that just has some leaf mulch that I made in my compost by myself.
So if you're talking 3 inches of mulch, maybe?
Yeah.
3 inches?
Yeah.
So is that, are you planting seedlings in the mulch?
No, I'm planting seedlings in the soil.
And then covering?
And then after the seedlings are in, then I fill it to the top with mulch, because once the soil settles, there's about 3 inches of space, and that's perfect for the mulch. And the mulch, the super dense leaf mulch that we sell, by the second year it's almost compost. It is compost. For the following season, it's almost become compost. And in the following 2 seasons, it's completely been composted just by sitting there. So then you need to, and then it's settled and it's squished down. And then you get, for the new season, after you put the seedlings in the soil, you get a new batch of fresh mulch that retains water, and then you put that on the top. So the very dense leaf mulch that we buy from the manufacturer, professional manufacturer of mulch, not only are you buying mulch, but you're actually also buying compost. So it's very cost effective.
So Estelle, if you're doing a bed from the very beginning,
yeah,
fill it all with your soil, and then you're ready to put your seedlings in. How long do you wait for it to compact? Like how long? You're not saying get in there and stomp it down. You're
no.
thinking, like it'll happen by itself.
It'll happen by itself. It doesn't matter. It'll happen pretty quickly.
Right.
If you water it and you put compost tea on it, it'll settle just from the water that you're putting on it. And then, there's another factor for height too you need to consider, which is every fall I put 2 inches of composted manure on all my beds, which is not quite the same as mushroom compost or any of that. It comes from dairy, organic dairy farm in Central Illinois, and I've been using it for like maybe 2 years. This will be my 3rd year, and as I said, I use my garden as a laboratory experiment. But after using this composted manure, this very high quality composted manure, my garden exploded. And it got taller and greener and bigger leaves. It was quite noticeable difference. And I had planted the same plants in the same spot, so it wasn't the sun. I think it was the composted manure. It must have something in it. See, I'm not a soil scientist. I don't know. I just trust them. But it must have something in it that is more powerful than just like mushroom compost or something like that. And you can't and you cannot ever use composted manure that comes from horses. So I think a lot of the composted manure that people sell does come from horses, and it's really, really bad for your. I mean, you can put it on a decorative garden, but you never ever put it on a garden that you're going to eat food from.
Why?
2 reasons. The horses get all kinds of drugs and chemicals. That's how they're raised in this culture. They're not raised organically. And it's got a lot of bad stuff in it. And second, some of the batches of horse manure apparently are not, they're not carefully composted. And they have tons and tons of pest larvae and all kinds of horrible things in it. And I have a friend whose garden was completely ruined by putting composted horse manure. And he's so upset that he has to take everything out of his beds. He has to haul it all away because he thinks that the bugs are still hatching from it and infesting his garden.
I have a question about the raised beds that you made. Do they have a floor in them, or are they
No.
just? So it's just a box. It's an exterior box.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
We're starting to sell a new kind of bed that does have a floor in it, but they're not on the store yet. They're on legs, so they're a counter. They're this height. They're like a kitchen counter height, and they have a floor and they have legs. And we're making them mostly because we got a grant from the OPRF Community Foundation to do a special project for seniors who want a garden, and the seniors can't,
Yeah, I
go
know.
like this. Yeah,
I read about a project where you were combining senior citizens and children.
that's the project.
Is
It's
that
students.
finished? Have you got
That's
all the
David's
sites?
project.
Are there any sites of it, anything available?
We're still finding the sites for it, but we're looking at a site in Chicago, Little Sisters of the Elderly, Little Brothers of Four Sisters of the Elderly. They're on Ashland in Chicago, and we hope to have a really nice installation with them. And they'll run actually the bringing in the multi-generational aspect with the seniors at their headquarters.
How much space do you need?
Well, we're probably going to install about 5 beds. They won't all be 4 by 8. They'll probably be a little smaller. Yes, we hope.
But after the Little Sisters are supplied, do you have any more?
Well, we're making them to order. They're going to be on our website.
No, but I'm talking about the project that we have.
Why don't we talk afterwards?
Okay.
Yeah, that is funded. That's a separate thing.
Right.
What we sell on our website is just a product. So we'll make, the high elevated raised beds to any size, except that they'd have to be modular, because when they're on legs, they don't have the strength to hold up a 4 by 8 huge weight of soil. So there would be like maximum be 4 by 4 or 2 by 4 or 1.5 by 8. So but we also have on our store, just added recently, is what we're calling is cedar containers. So they're really small. They're kind of like baby versions of, they're these 2 guys, these little small ones. We're calling them cedar containers. And so they're basically that, but on legs. And that can hold the weight of the soil. And then they can be placed next to each other or around the side of your garage or around the perimeter of your patio, so they can be part of the landscaping design.
Are there any community gardens in Oak Park, or I think Forest Park is one, but are there any?
There's one I know in River Forest, which is across the street from Trinity High School on Jackson. They have a bunch of community plots. I think they'll continue to expand that property as people ask for it. I don't know about Oak Park. Nothing in Oak Park?
Not anymore. We used to.
Yeah.
Deep Roots had a community garden in a private yard for a while because people didn't want us there anymore. And then we had it in a empty lot on Madison for a while, and we kicked us out of there. So no, it was Root Riot. It was called Root Riot on Madison. The Root Riot people still have their community garden in Austin. It's called Harambe Garden. And Sean, I can give you the contact information for the person who runs it.
Please.
I you about, I'm in a new home and I have to set up some new container gardening. And I wanted to know if there's any advantage or disadvantage to having it right up against the house, like a brick house with a west wall.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad?
It's great. I mean, that's
There's
gold.
no
That's
problem with the extra E?
Yeah, that's gold space to where that, if you have that western wall and have a bed right off of that, that may give you an extra 8 to 12 degrees of air temperature, which is what your tomatoes, all your warm weather plants will feel during the summertime, but also it'll make it so that you can actually get into the garden earlier in the season. So where a lot of us grew up thinking like, you put your garden in on Mother's Day, you've got this western wall that's soaking up sun all day. You might be in there before April's up. So it really is. It's a great thing if you have growing space right there.
And related to that, is it then okay or good to make a raised bed out of, say, cement blocks? Is that tricky? Is that good or bad?
It depends. I tell people to avoid cinder blocks because you just don't know what chemicals are in those cinder blocks that's coming back into your soil. If you were to speak to a landscaper, like specifically for using pavers, I would ask them, if these pavers are appropriate for growing food, and they should be able to tell you.
We use pavers that are made out of bricks. Like you take 2 bricks, but they're one paver. And they're like a square. They're not a rectangle. And we use those in all our raised beds in our front yard. You can come by and see them all the time. It's on East Avenue between Washington and Randolph. We have 2 huge raised beds that are like 18 inches high, made out of pavers, and they're red brick. It's expensive. Well, no, it doesn't have to be expensive because if you get them, if you get recycled used bricks, they're actually quite cheap. And we got ours from we use Depot on Madison and New Forest. They're really cheap. You just kind of find the recycled things.
Please.
We have a very windy garden area, and I'm concerned about not having enough pollinators. What do you think about putting bee containers? I'm not thinking about honeybees, mason bees.
So one thing to think about is if your home has any unprotected areas where they might think your home is more attractive than what you put out there. So, I would want to be thinking about if there's any, say, broken spots in your mortar, anything where they might see an alternate spot and think that's a better idea. I think adding pollinators is a great idea. With that particular variety of insect, though, I believe that people have had issues with them getting into the house from the outside.
What other pollinators are available or offered?
I can
You can,
The best thing to do, honestly, is to put some native plants near your garden, because everybody gets excited about honeybees, but they're not native. And there's tons of really, really beautiful little native bees that will come all over your garden if you plant some native plants near it. So put in some purple coneflower, put in, a few things like that, and you'll get these lovely little green iridescent bees that will pollinate everything.
can you buy those seed packs that'll specifically say like pollinator garden or?
You can, but the best thing, honestly, to do is to buy from someone like the Westcook Wild Ones when they have their plant sale, because they've got honest natives that are ready for our area, and not like cultivars or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's the best thing to do. But just put a little butterfly weed in, and then you'll get some monarchs, and that's the best thing to do.
That's great. Thank you.
And it's easy, because you don't have to take care of them.
Recommendation for where to get those?
There's a group called Westcook Wild Ones, and they run a plant sale every year. There's also there's Prairie Moon has really good ones too, and there's another one too.
There's one on
Native
the west side of Chicago called, they call themselves CCGA, the Chicago Community Gardeners Association. They have a website as well.
And I bet even Garfield Park, or I mean the Oak Park Conservatory, when they have their
Yeah.
plant sale, they'll have some natives too.
Okay, please.
Yeah, what about cover crops? Do you recommend those?
I love cover crops. Regardless of the type of space that you have, one of the cover crops that I really liked a lot is called hairy vetch. Winter kill is really nice. You could plant that even on a raised bed if you were to put a layer of hairy vetch in there, let it grow, and then let winter happen. The next year, just kind of chop it up and get ready to plant. So I'm a fan of cover crops. That was the one I used the most. I used winter rye, winter wheat, buckwheat, but the hairy vetch was one that you get a lot of plant and then it dies in the winter, so that when spring comes, you're ready to go. Please.
Let it between the rows or after you harvest it?
After I'd harvested, or like if I had sections in my garden to where I knew some parts were coming out earlier than other parts. Once I got that early part out, I would just plant it there, let it do its thing. And planting in the rows, though, also you certainly could do. But, if you're not harvesting your whole garden at the whole time, or at the same time, just plant in that one area that you can get out. You can rotate over the years.
What does it look like, clover?
No, it's a vine. It's a really thin vine, and it almost has like these little fern leaves that come off it, but it makes this mat of plant, to where it grows really quick, and then once it gets cold or snow, it's gone. It dies, and then but it's there in the spring, and you can just move it and plant into it. Please.
For the raised beds or containers, is there like a minimum width that you need to have, or like if you have a narrow space, like?
You could go whether, think of the raised bed as just another type of container, so the more narrow space that you have, the less you can grow in it, but you can still grow in it, so, just keeping in mind the nutrition, if the water's okay, if you have sunlight, and then you're only limited in the quantity that you can plant. That's all. Yeah. There was another, please.
Yeah, on the hairy vetch.
Uh-huh.
So in the spring, do you have to take it out
No.
to plant, or it just decomposes?
You could run a lawnmower over it. You could move the mat out of the way and plant through it. You could I wouldn't take it out. I would leave that right there on the top. But the easiest thing you could do is if you were to leave it in place, punch a hole through it and plant your seed. Leave a little space so the sun can get at that area of dirt where you hid your seed. But now you've got built-in mulch, and you're kind of starting off on the right foot. Please.
Hi, so my family would like to have a raised bed garden, but we're starting from total scratch. We don't have any experience gardening. We don't have, any experience like figuring out what plants, planning what we would pick, anything. I was just wondering, it looked like the Roots Project is a great resource. Do you have any other ideas for resources that a book we should read, or or a great website to go to, or if not, just any other essential advice that you would give to people who are starting from scratch?
Yeah, so you have two resources right here. You have Deep Roots, and my website is chicagobackyardfarmer.com.
Okay.
So
Say your website again, please.
www.chicagobackyardfarmer.com. But as far as raised beds, materials you need, David or Estelle could talk to you about all of that.
Well, I want to go one step further, though. I've been wanting to do this, but I haven't had time, but I will now have time, I think. I want to take all the best tips for each of the vegetables that are on our seedling, part of our online store. Each of them has its own page, and I want to put all the things that you do, the special fertilizer, how you plant it, harvest it, what you do to prevent any pests when you put the row cover on, when you take it off, you know, what you look for, you know, certain types of bugs that like that particular plant, what the family it's in, so you know when you take it out, you know that you put something in that's not in the family, what was there before. So I wanna use the online store pages that we've already got on there as a how to grow page as well. So everything you need to know is in one place, and it's all going to be approved by Dan, because I trust his judgment on everything.
Stan.
Okay.
Let me just click through the recap here, and you know, so we can kind of leave you with the main points. You know, so remembering the 4 pillars of gardening, of container gardening: your nutrition, your water, your sunlight, and now I forgot the last one. And pests. Thank you. So embrace the space that you have. If you have a small space, don't not grow. Like, you can max out whatever space that you have. Look at your garden to check the health a couple times a week. You don't have to overdo it, but just remember your garden's out there and it's doing stuff whether you're checking on it or not. Last, don't overcomplicate it. Just experiment, you know, with the space that you have, and that'll keep it fun for you. So in the back, there was a woman who had asked about resources. This is my favorite gardening book ever. It's this guy named Elliot Coleman. He's got a website as well called, I believe it's called The 4-Season Farm.
And an amazing farm.
And an amazing farm.
We
But
go there every summer.
you go there as well?
Mm-hmm.
So the way he writes about gardening is what I try to do, and maybe I fail, but he makes gardening so easy and so logical that the book's just a real gem, and it's not difficult to read at all. So I would recommend that for anybody. He has several other books, but this one's the good one. Are there any more questions? Thoughts, comments?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, let's all thank
Okay.
Dan.
Thank you.